just as David did, we can turn to this powerful Lord as vulnerable and anxious Christians to receive the peace and strength we need. Let's pray as we stand. Lord, please show us who you really are and how we should relate to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Please take a seat. Well, let me ask you a question. As a Christian, have you ever felt vulnerable, threatened, or anxious? I suggest that we might feel like this as Christians more often than we like to admit, and it's very understandable that we feel this way. We hear about world events, the treatment of Christians in Iraq and Syria. We see things in our own culture turning in on us. Under a guise of tolerance, Christians in the UK have pressure put on them to keep their views private. We know that we're in a minority and that we're not tolerated. And beyond all that, we feel the chaos of our own lives, that we face anxieties that weigh us down at work, at home, and in the rest of life. We feel powerless to control what's going on, and we struggle to keep trusting God in our trials. As Christians, we often feel vulnerable, threatened, and anxious. And the question, when we feel this way, is this: how can we actually process what is going on inside us? What is the godly response when we feel this way? You'll be relieved to know that the godly response is not to put on a stiff British upper lip and to keep calm and carry on. No, praise God, he has given us the Psalms. They are songs of the soul for every season of life. God invites us in the Psalms to come to them as we are, with all the emotional baggage we carry, and to come away from them refreshed and revitalized, having met with the Lord. And this evening we're going to look at Psalm 29. It's the first in our series, The Voice of the Lord. And it is a place where vulnerable, threatened, and anxious Christians can come for peace and strength. The author of the psalm is King David. And in this psalm, King David takes us on an amazing journey. We start with worship in heaven in verses 1 to 2. We then go down to earth for a storm, verses 3 to 9. And then we finish with a king on the throne. And I hope we'll find that as we read this psalm, although it looks quite scary, that it's actually full of comfort for God's vulnerable and anxious people. My first point, and you can follow the points on the back of the service sheet. My first point is that the Lord is great and deserves glory. That's verses 1 and 2. The Lord is great and deserves glory. Let me read those verses. Ascribe to the Lord, O heavenly beings, ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due to his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of holiness. 3 quick questions on these verses. Number 1, who's David talking to? Well, verse 1 says heavenly beings. From the footnote, that can be translated as the sons of God or the sons of might. I think the best stab I can come up with is angels in heaven. Question 2, what's David commanding the angels to do? He wants them to ascribe glory and strength to God. The word ascribe means to assign a value or a quality to someone. And the word glory means the full weight of honor, fame, praise, and respect. So God wants the angels in heaven, and also by extension us too, to assign to God the full weight of respect that he deserves. Indeed, the angels are commanded to worship him, to bow down to him. Question 3, but why should the angels and us relate to God in this way? Well, verse 2, because of the glory due to his name. Why should we give the God glory? Well, it's a copy from a very cheesy 1990s L'Oreal advertisement, because he's worth it. God's worth it. Give him the glory, because it's due to him. But if you're a Christian, not a Christian here this evening, it's wonderful to have you with us, but you might be thinking, well, what is it with this idea of worshipping God? I became a Christian when I was at secondary school, and I remember speaking about my Christian faith to a mate on the school bus, and he just couldn't really get his head around this idea of Christians worshipping God. He said to me, look, I just don't like this idea of worship, and he really pulled a face as if worshipping God was just demeaning for any human beings to be doing that kind of thing. That it's the same thing as sort of mindlessly bowing down to a statue, sort of switching off your brain and worshipping something. And maybe you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, why on earth should I worship God like it says in verses 1 and 2? Well, be patient, because there's more of Psalm 29 to come. That was my first point. The Lord is great and he deserves glory. Well, we now move on our journey from a scene of worship in heaven to a storm on the earth. And my second point is that the Lord is powerful and controls nature. The Lord is powerful and controls nature, verses 3 to 9. One of the things I love about the Psalms is the way that they make use of nature to focus our thoughts on nature, so that we then fix our minds on the Lord behind nature. So, for example, in Psalm 8, we're invited to stay up late and do a little bit of stargazing, and that encourages us to ponder the majesty of the Lord who made the stars. In Psalm 19, we're invited to take a day out, maybe to the coast, and observe the rising sun, and enjoy a good day out, and then observe the setting of the sun. And it points our minds to the glory of God. And in Psalm 29, we're invited up into a kind of helicopter ride to watch the progress of an enormous thunderstorm sweeping through the Middle East. And that leads us to marvel at God's power. So, ladies and gentlemen, seatbelt fastened. We're going to follow the progress of a storm. Verse 3, the storm comes over from the Mediterranean Sea. Where did I get that from? Well, waters is another word for sea. So the storm comes over there. Into Lebanon, to the forests and mountains, verse 5, over to Mount Hermon, or Syrian, which is on the modern-day border with Syria, which stands at 2,800 meters high, and then verse 8, down the River Jordan to the southern desert of Kadesh. Well, that's quite an interesting journey, but what amazes you while you're up in the helicopter with me is the force and the violence of the storm. Let me just read those verses again. Verse 3, the voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. There are loud claps of thunder. The Lord over many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. The Lord breaks the cedars of Lebanon. So trees are being battered to the ground. Branches are snapping up in the storm. He makes Lebanon to skip like a calf, and Syrian like a young wild ox. So even the great forests and mountains of Lebanon are being thrown around in the storm. The voice of the Lord flashes forth flames of fire. So you've got lightning in the sky. The voice of the Lord shakes the wilderness. The Lord shakes the wilderness of Kadesh. So maybe you've got a sandstorm flowing through the deserts. The voice of the Lord makes the deer give birth. You might be thinking that sounds a bit strange. Well, I think the meaning there is that the storm shocks the deer into giving birth sooner than they would do otherwise. We've also got the footnote that the could also be translated, the oak trees are vigorously shaken in the wind. So I'll let you take the pick. The voice of the Lord then strips the forest bare, so you've got forests flattened to the ground, and all in his temple cry, glory. This is a great storm, isn't it? It's on the scale of, if you were here in Newcastle in 2012, the 28th of June, when the Tyne Bridge was struck by lightning and there was all that flooding. This is an awesome and spectacular storm. But David's intention in Psalm 29 is not just to show us the awesome power of nature. After all, we could all stay at home and watch the BBC weather and learn more about that. David wants to point us to the one who stands behind the storm. He wants to point us to the Lord. He unashamedly says that this powerful storm, in all its might, is under the control of the voice of the Lord. You just see that repeated. So verse 3, verse 5, verse 7, verse 8, verse 9. So just as God created nature, so today he is active in sustaining nature, including these spectacular thunderstorms. But then why use this particular picture of a thunderstorm to make a point about the Lord? Well, at the time David was writing, many people in Syria and Palestine worshipped Baal or Baal, the so-called storm god. So in describing this dramatic thunderstorm, David is deliberately setting the Lord against Baal. David is reminding God's people that the Lord is the very same God who triumphed back at Mount Carmel against Baal in 1 Kings 18. There was that head-to-head challenge between the Lord and Baal. The goal was to see which one controlled nature, which one was really the Lord. Would the real God really stand up? And he did. Because Baal, the storm god, could not send fire from heaven to burn the sacrifice, but the God of heaven, he did. And the people fell on their faces and said, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God, not Baal. But the next question is, well, what does that mean for us today? After all, I don't think, looking at you, that many of you are closet Baal worshippers. So what's the challenge for us? Well, the key question in this is all about glory. Who gets the glory? We all choose who we admire most or what we admire most. What is it? Well, in some cultures around the world, nature is not just respected, but it is revered. So people talk about the gods of nature, or the god of nature, or Mother Nature, and people give glory to those gods. In other cultures around the world, I think like British culture, we simply give the glory to ourselves as human beings. And this psalm teaches us a simple but very humbling lesson. These storms remind us that the Lord is powerful and controls nature. So we need to assign the glory not to nature, not to ourselves, but to the Lord. It is a mark of 21st century Western culture that human beings want to control nature, and we even think we have a sort of right to be able to control nature. So that's why we get so angry when things kind of come in and mess up our plans, because we want to stay in control. I remember hearing news reports about, you might remember in London, a couple of years ago, there was a lot of snow, well, 2 inches, but it was enough to bring London to a standstill. And people were just saying, it's outrageous, how can this happen to our capital city, that there's snow and where things, the buses aren't running and I can't get my car out and I can't get to work, it's outrageous. Why can't we control these things? And they were talking about getting in ploughs from Moscow to try and sort of snow plough, so ready for the next snow when it comes. But we laugh, but there's a bit of that inside all of us, that we don't like it when nature or other things kind of get big on us. We don't like it when things invade our lives as humans, because it reminds us that we're not gods because we can't control things. So as we read this psalm, we're to feel what the writer is saying about the Lord, to feel his power, to feel how small we are, and to stop thinking of ourselves so highly. When we observe the Lord's awesome power over nature as we do here, we must recognize the immense folly of humanism. We must give the glory not to man, not to ourselves, not to nature, but to the Lord who's powerful and controls nature. And he doesn't just control nature, he also controls the whole of history. So David in verses 3-9 has reminded us that the Lord is powerful and controls nature. So he deserves the full weight of our respect and honour. We should worship the Lord and say, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. To him be the glory. Well, the helicopter ride is now over. So we've landed, and it's now time to look at our final scene in Psalm 29, which is the king on his throne. And my final point is, the Lord is king and blesses his people. That's verses 10-11. The Lord is king and blesses his people. Let me read verse 10 again. The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. The Lord sits enthroned as king forever. It's interesting, isn't it, that such a powerful psalm with so much movement ends with calm, with the Lord sitting on his throne. In verse 10 there, the Hebrew word for flood is the same word used of the great flood in Genesis chapters 6 and 7, which was the flood was the Lord's great act of judgment of the ancient world. So the Lord was judge. The Lord is judge. And when the Lord Jesus returns, he will be our judge. The Lord is the King forever. What a good end to the psalm, you might think. But the surprise is that Psalm 29 doesn't finish there, does it? It doesn't finish. Because although God acts in judgment against his enemies, he also blesses his people. So in verse 11, David prays, "May the Lord give strength to his people. May the Lord bless his people with peace." Could also be translated, the Lord will give strength to his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace. Both are true. But what does it actually mean in practice for us today, that the Lord will bless his people and give them peace and strength? Well, it means everything. It's our lifeline as Christians. Because just as David did, we can turn to this powerful Lord as vulnerable and anxious Christians to receive the peace and strength we need. And these blessings of peace and strength come to us through Jesus Christ. Indeed, the whole of Psalm 29 points forward to him. When Jesus was born, the angels praised God using the language of Psalm 29. Luke chapter 2, verse 14. Glory to God in the highest. Glory to God in the highest. That's like worship in heaven. Psalm chapter 29, verse 1. And on earth, peace among those with whom he is pleased. And on earth, peace among those with whom he is pleased. Peace on earth. Psalm 29, verse 11. The good news for all of us is that through Jesus, we can have peace with the Lord. If we trust in Jesus and his blood shed on the cross, we are reconciled to God. We are no longer God's enemies. We are his children. We have peace with God. But that's not the only peace that God offers us. He offers us much more. The Lord also offers us great peace in the chaos of life. When we feel vulnerable, threatened, and anxious, we can turn to this Lord for peace. In our New Testament reading, we met another fierce storm like the one in Psalm 29. The boat was sinking, the disciples were fearing for their lives, and Jesus was sleeping. And the disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, why do you not care that we're perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, "Who is this, then, that even the wind and sea obey him?" Of course, Jesus is God. He controls the storms in nature, and he also controls the storms in our lives as well. I wonder, as I look out here, what concerns are weighing each of you down at the moment. There might be some people here who've just arrived recently in Newcastle. Maybe you're worried about whether or not you'll settle into our church family here. And maybe you're just worried generally about the transition, moving to a new place, which is difficult. Maybe you're at the other end of the spectrum. You're about to leave Newcastle, and you feel threatened by an uncertain future ahead of you. Maybe you're worried about the state of your marriage. It's so hard, and you're struggling. Maybe you feel threatened by this anti-Christian environment at work that's just so oppressive, and it feels like going back on Monday morning is such an effort. Maybe you just worry generally about the state of the world. I mean, what is going on in the world? The rise of secularism, the rise of militant Islam, mounting opposition against Christians. How can I cope? Or maybe you just have this sense of vulnerability as a Christian, that you find it so easy to disobey God and so hard to trust him. And you just think, man, one of these days I'm just going to give up trusting him. Maybe there are hidden things in your heart that no one else knows about here. Hidden fears, hidden pains, hidden worries that you feel will never leave you. Well, friends, the Lord has wonderful news for all of us. Whatever our concerns, we can commit them to the Lord, and he will bless us with peace. Philippians chapter 4, verses 5 to 7 says these words: "The Lord is at hand," or near. "Do not be anxious about anything, But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Friends, I don't know what threats and worries are pressing on you this evening, but can I make a suggestion? When you get home, sit down and take some time to lay these worries before the Lord, one at a time. Because if we make the choice to bring our anxieties to the Lord, rather than holding on to them in our hearts, the promise for us is wonderful. The peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard our hearts and our minds in Christ Jesus. The Lord is King and blesses his people. Let me just say a final few words of application. If you wouldn't call yourself a Christian here this evening, I spoke directly about the arrogance of turning against God and not giving him the glory we deserve. Well, can you see also the blessing of being on the Lord's side here? Through Jesus Christ, God is offering you a peace deal. Will you lay down your weapons and make peace with him now? If you do so, when you meet him in all his glory as judge on the throne, you won't need to fear him. And you'll have God's peace in your heart as you live in this dangerous and chaotic world. And finally, a word to my brothers and sisters here at Jesmond Parish Church. You don't need me to tell you that Jesmond Parish Church is a busy church family. Lots going on, and much to thank God for as well. But in our busy service of God, let's not forget the Lord whom we're serving. And maybe the summer's a good time, as Ian's been saying, while the church calendar's just a little bit quieter, there's less things going on, to refocus on the Lord and to make a more concerted effort to bring our concerns to the Lord in prayer. Because from Psalm 29 we've seen that the Lord is great and he deserves glory. He's powerful and controls nature, and he's king and he blesses his people. Let me pray as we finish. May the Lord give strength to his people. May the Lord bless his people with peace. Father, may you bless us with your strength and peace, and help us to remember who you are and how we should relate to you rightly. In Jesus' name, amen.